I think good stories endure.
Yes, well, there we are. Congratulations. Well done. Yes, there we are. Well done. Congratulations. Is that absolutely necessary? Yes, what did he say?
He says, yeah, he's afraid it is.
Ah, fine, fine. There we are, madam. Congratulations. Well done. Jolly good.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Flix Files. My name's Roger. It's great to have you back. I think it's time I did a bit of a deep dive video again. It's been a little while since I've talked about just one specific movie. And I thought, well, if I'm going to do one, let's do one of my real favourite movies. One that's in, say, my top 20. And try and make a nice video about that. And I decided to talk about Hood Prince of Thieves because I adore this film. Obviously I do. Every movie I talk about on this channel I adore, and I really love Hood Prince of Thieves. And before I get going, I know I've said this many times, but for any new viewers that are watching, I record my talks, should we say, in one take. So I just set my camera recording and sit down in front of it. I don't script anything. And I very rarely rely on any kind of notes. There's a few videos that I did where I wrote a few pointers down, shall we say, to remind me of things to talk about. But usually I kind of just do it off the cuff. Now, maybe that's making it hard for myself, but I've always kind of enjoyed doing it that way because it just seems a lot more natural. And I get a bit bored with watching videos of YouTubers where they very clearly are reading as they're talking, and you can see their eyes moving from one side to the other as they're reading it off of a screen. And I just thought it would be better to kind of do it this way. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but that's what I'm going to stick with. So I'm going to talk about Hood Prince of Thieves.
I will not rest until my father's avenged. I swear it by my own blood.
And I've got a very long history with this movie. I saw this on its original release back in 1991. And it always makes me think of the first job, full-time job I ever had, because I'd recently started that job when not long before this movie opened. I think I started in February as this movie opened in July, I think it was, of 91. So it was a great thing for work colleagues to talk about, and it kind of brought us all together a little bit. And I have very fond memories of that in the summer of 1991 and going to see this film. And I've got a long history with it on home media because it was the following year in 1992, it was released on VHS. And it was one of those movies that was released to buy on the same day as it was released to rent. And that was still a fairly new thing at that point, that films would do that certain studios would release them to buy and to rent on the same day. And it was great for movie lovers, movie collectors like me, because it meant I didn't have to wait. I could just buy it on release day and then take it home and watch it as many times as I wanted. So I've got, again, very vivid memories of stopping in the town centre one afternoon on my way back from work and going into our local bloody John Menzies, if you're from the UK, if you remember John Menzies. And they were a sort of newsagents, but they also sold films and books and things like that. And I remember them having a big display and a big cardboard cutout of Kevin Costner dressed up as Robin Hood. And I bought the VHS of it. And I remember the VHS had the music video to Bryan Adams' Everything I Do for You, which was sort of the theme song for this movie. and the music video started to play as the credits began to roll at the end of the VHS version. So I've got very fond memories of that. And then I remember when DVDs became a thing in the very, very late 90s. It was one of the first DVDs I ever bought, was the Warner Brothers vanilla release of it. And the Warner Brothers DVDs back in the day had these horrible kind of cardboard covers. I don't really have any of them anymore in my collection. I sold all my DVDs, so I'll have to find a picture of one of them. But they were really horrible boxes and they were very easily damaged. And I remember having Prince of Thieves like that. And then I sold that and bought an American DVD version of Robin Hood Prince of Thieves because it was like a 2-disc special edition that had a lot of extras. Then I got rid of that and bought the Blu-ray version of it when Blu-ray started to take off. And then I got rid of that and bought a collector's edition on Blu-ray that had an extended version of the movie. And then finally, I got rid of that and bought the absolutely wonderful Arrow release that I now use. And this is possibly the best version of this movie we're ever going to have, because it's in 4K and they remastered the picture and it has a wealth of extras. And even though I'm a movie lover and I collect films, I've never been one for buying big, lavish, limited edition box sets. But with this one, I saw that they did sort of a box set for it that was about, I think it was about £30. And I bit the bullet and bought it. And it comes with a really nice fold-out poster of the original artwork, movie poster, and then a new artwork that Arrow commissioned. They tend to do that. If you buy any Arrow Blu-rays, they usually have reversible covers. So you can either have the new commissioned artwork or the original artwork on either side. And that poster I've framed put it up on my movie wall. So I'll show you some footage of that. And I have some Robin Hood Prince of Thieves books. I have the novelization of the movie. I have the making of the movie, like a glossy book that was released around the time the film came out. That's a really interesting read. And if you're a big fan of the movie and you've not seen that book, I recommend you looking on eBay to see if you can get a copy of it. So I've got quite a bit of bits and bobs and a long history with this film because I love it so much. And there are many things about this film that I like. Firstly, I'm going to say, first and foremost, and this is probably going to surprise you, but my most favourite thing about this film is Kevin Reynolds and the way he directed it.
He is a hero. He's a larger-than-life character. I mean, there's even some question as to whether or not he really existed, if he was just something that people created because they needed a hero. You know, a guy who's witty and he's talented and he's strong and he comes from sort of the upper classes, but he supports the underdog and he does everything right. And that's what most heroes are like. It's one of the most famous legends in the world. You know, they say there's 7 basic stories, and I don't know what the other 6 are, but I'm sure one of them is Robin Hood.
And the way he used real-world locations, because there are very few scenes in this movie that obviously took place on sound stages, but a lot of it is in real-world locations, and it just makes the movie so much better. When you're doing a movie about Robin Hood, you want him to be in woodlands and in real country locations that really show off England. And this movie delivers that in spades. Interestingly, they also used a castle located in the south of France called Carcassonne. And I've been there. I had a little holiday there back in about 2016, and we were there for a weekend. And I specifically wanted to go there just for this reason, because they filmed some of Robin Hood Prince of Thieves there. But the castle is absolutely beautiful. It's like being in a Disney movie. And I've got quite a few pictures of being there, and I tried to find the exact spots where certain people would have been standing when they made the movie. But it's just an absolutely beautiful location. And they did another scene in a location called, I think it's called Asgarth Falls in North Yorkshire. And that's where they filmed the scene between Little John and Robin Hood, where they fight using the big poles. That's one of my favourite scenes. So that's first and foremost the thing I absolutely love about this movie is the way Kevin Reynolds directed it and used real-world locations. And I understand that he was a big fan of Ridley Scott, who isn't, and he used Ridley Scott's first movie, The Duelists, as inspiration for this movie, and the way Ridley Scott used locations, outdoor locations in that movie. And it really pays off because this is such a sumptuous looking film. And secondly, the cast are just absolutely great. There isn't one member of the cast in this movie that's weak. Whether they're only small parts or whether they're the major players, they're all great. Now, whenever you talk of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, inevitably people will start going on about Kevin Costner and his accent and how he's meant to be Robin Hood, but he kind of gave up trying to do the British accent and just ends up talking like Kevin Costner.
I've come to warn you that if you do not stop levying these evil taxes, I shall lead the good people of England in a revolt against you.
And why should the people listen to you?
Because, unlike some other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent.
But to me, that's secondary. It doesn't matter. What matters is the movie as a whole and how it all comes together and just works. And Kevin Costner was such a massive bankable movie star at that point. Of course, the studio are going to hire him to play Robin Hood over some other British actor that's probably like a B-list actor. And I can remember being very dubious when I read about the pre-production of this movie in Empire magazine, and when I read that he'd been cast, and thinking, Kevin Costner as Robin Hood, having just recently seen him in Dances with Wolves, and prior to that, things like Field of Dreams and The Untouchables. I just couldn't imagine him using a bow and arrow and prancing around in green tights. But of course, the Robin Hood that Kevin Reynolds gave us was a lot more rooted in reality. And the costume design in this movie is absolutely fantastic. And the design of Robin Hood's outfit is a lot more kind of rugged and earthy and uses more leather than it does green tights. Yeah, and it just really, really works. And then we have Morgan Freeman as Azim, as the sidekick that he ends up befriending at the beginning when he breaks him out of shackles at the beginning of the movie.
I fulfill my vows when I choose.
Which does not include prayer times or meal times or any time I'm outnumbered 6-1.
You whine like a mule. You are still alive.
And just all the other players, you've got Christian Slater as Will Scarlet, who again doesn't really try to hide his American accent. He just plays it as Christian Slater. But he's great in it. He was a great actor, Christian Slater. He made a lot of movies earlier on in his career that I always enjoy. Heathers is another one. The absolutely superb Brian Blessed.
Then tell her this book of shit, sphincter, arsehole up your ass, up your you sideways, you boring off, you cow!
As Robin Hood's father, who's in it briefly at the beginning of the movie. And Brian Blessed is, again, another one of those actors. I've said this before about actors. There are certain ones that just elevate the movie whenever they're in it.
Gordon's alive!
And Brian Blessed is one of those people. Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio as Marion. Beautiful actress. I'd recently seen her in The Abyss, and this was the next movie that I saw her in. I think prior to The Abyss, she was in The Colour of Money with Tom Cruise and Paul Newman, the Martin Scorsese movie. I thought she was really good in that as well. And she was in Scarface. So yeah, she's a lovely actress. And apparently it was meant to be Robin Wright who was going to be Marion in this movie. And I'm trying to remember what happened. I think, did she have a horse riding accident and she had to pull out at the last minute? I don't know if that's true. I'm just trying to root through memories while I'm talking. But I think that might be the reason why. And I'm sure she would have been very good in it, but Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio is just so gorgeous and so lovable in this movie. And then, of course, we have possibly the brightest star in the whole film, and that is the late, great Alan Rickman as the Sheriff of Nottingham. And yes, he did steal the movie, and the movie's all the more glorious for it. And there was a lot of press when this movie came out about how Kevin Reynolds was locked out of the editing room when the movie was in post-production. And there were rumors that it was Kevin Costner that did this because he was seeing cuts that were being done, and he realized that Alan Rickman was slowly taking over the picture and was becoming kind of the main star. So Kevin Costner wanted to rectify that. I don't know if that's true. I just remember reading those rumors back in the day. But certainly, if you watch the extended version of this movie, which is available on the Arrow 4K, there is more of Alan Rickman. And it really helps build his character. And there's some interesting plot points that come to light as a part of the extended edition, which I won't talk about here because it's spoilers. But we learn a few more things about him that makes his character a bit more interesting. So, yeah, the whole cast is just glorious, and they all work together really well. Mike McShane, of course, as Friar Tuck, the wonderful Mike McShane. I knew Mike McShane because he was a regular player on a show called Whose Line Is It Anyway? That I used to love watching in the late 80s.
And they've each of them got to come and think up of many examples of the world's worst person to be coming forward to receive an Oscar. So I'll buzz you when I've got the idea of each of your ideas. So go ahead now.
I'd just like to say it's about time you son of a bitches gave me an award.
I don't deserve this. I don't deserve this award, so I'm going to club myself to death with it right here. I'd like to thank Alan and Terry, and most I'd like to thank Bill, who helped me so much during the shooting.
So it was lovely to see him in this movie. So yeah, the cast is absolutely fantastic, and there isn't really a weak link in any of them. And I'm not going to talk about the whole plot. I'll just talk about specific scenes that I really like. And the first scene is, I love the first meeting between Robin Hood and Little John, which takes place on the Asgarth Falls that I talked about. I think it's Asgarth Falls. I'm sure that's what it's called. I hope I've got that right. I'll have to put some text up on the screen if I've got that wrong. But an absolutely beautiful location, and a great sequence where they're crossing the river and they suddenly come out of the woods on the other side of the river and explain to Robin Hood that he has to pay a toll if he wants to cross. And he ends up getting into a fight with Little John, which is a nice little action sequence where they fight him with these large sticks.
Hit him, Father! Wallace!
And for the most part, Little John is winning, and he keeps knocking Robin Hood into the river. And at the last moment, Robin Hood plays dead as if he's drowned, and Little John suddenly feels a bit of remorse that it was maybe a bit too hard on him. And suddenly Robin Hood produces this stick out of the water and whacks him right between his legs and knocks him into the river. And then we find out that Little John panics because he can't swim. And it's just a great sequence, and it highlights something that we'll see later in the movie, that Kevin Reynolds is such a great director of action sequences. I put him in the same league as like Steven Spielberg and George Miller, and he's one of those directors that can film very exciting action in a way that makes it completely legible, and it doesn't rely on shaky cam and lots of fast cutting. We can always clearly see what's happening. And it just makes the movie so much more enjoyable. And that's one of the reasons I've watched it loads of times. Everything that I've just talked about all comes together to make this just a warm, fuzzy movie that gives me such a lovely feeling whenever I watch it. And it just brings back memories of me working in the early 90s and talking to my work colleagues about this film and how it seemed to be the topic of conversation for weeks. And it was one of those movies that was just in the social conscious for such a long time. And I think one of the reasons for that was that Bryan Adams' song Everything I Do For You was just in the charts for what seemed like months and months and months. And that must have really helped the box office for this movie. So the other scene that I absolutely love in this film takes place in towards the end of the movie, where Will Scarlet, Christian Slater's character, and the son of Little John have been captured and they're about to be hanged in the courtyard. And Robin Hood and Azim bandy together to rescue them. And they come up with this plan of using barrels of gunpowder, of this mysterious black powder called gunpowder. And it's such a brilliantly executed and exciting sequence where the executioner starts to hang these prisoners. And Robin Hood is trying to use his arrow and fire an arrow to cut the rope of the rope that's hanging Little John's son. And it's so exciting and it's fantastic to watch. And it has one of the most famous shots in the movie where Robin Hood fires a flaming arrow sort of straight into the camera. And we watch it fly through the air and it hits the executioner right in the face just as he's about to chop off Will Scarlet's head. And there's an interesting little anecdote about the executioner, actually. I've got the old edition of Empire magazine from 1991 when this movie came out. And there was an interview in there of the actor that played the role of the executioner. And he talks about what it's like being a sort of faceless extra on a big Hollywood movie. And he mentioned, and you have to remember this is the 1990, this would have been when the movie was actually being filmed. And he mentions that he was paid $1,000 a day to work on that movie as the executioner. And he was on the movie for 6 weeks. So you think of that, $1,000 a day for 6 weeks. And if you add together all of the footage of him actually in the movie, it barely adds up to about 1.5 minutes. It's ridiculous. So you start to realize why these films cost as much money as they do. But there's some lovely little stories that he tells, and he talks about how friendly and welcoming Kevin Costner was as a person, and how he gelled really well with all the cast and crew, and everybody just adored him. What a great guy he was, which I've always known. We always knew Kevin Costner was a good soul, but it's just nice to read that. So yeah, that's another sequence in the movie that I really like, and that leads into kind of the end of the movie where the Sheriff of Nottingham is trying to get married to Marion, so he can consummate the relationship, should we say, and get her pregnant. And the whole sequence there where Robin Hood jumps off the top of the tower and sort of swings and smashes through the window like he's Bruce Willis in Die Hard. And he has a big sword fight with Alan Rickman. It's just a great sequence. And I didn't want to talk through the whole movie plot detail by plot detail, because this video would be like an hour long. It was just to try and get across why this movie means so much to me and what I love about it. So I hope I've done that. And I also want to mention the fantastic music score by the very late and great Michael Kamen. And Michael Kamen did a lot of film scores that I really loved in the 80s and early 90s. He did the score to Highlander, which is another score that I really, really like. And his score for this movie is just absolutely superb. And it's a very iconic score that they used for many movie trailers for some years after. And it's a really rousing score. And I can remember when I sat down in the cinema to watch this movie for the first time and that music began at the beginning of the movie. It just gave me chills and just made me excited to watch the movie unfold. It's just absolutely superb. So there we are. That's my little homage and chat about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. If you have seen this movie and you have thoughts on it, I'd love to know what you think. If you think it is forgettable or if you enjoy it as much as I do, I'd love to know. So please leave me a comment and let me know. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that little chat. I'm going to keep this fairly short because I've had comments that some of my videos are a bit too long and I tend to ramble. So hopefully I've kept the rambling short and concise on this video. And give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed that, and I'll see you soon, guys. So bye for now.